like sometimes helping someone is by telling them no, because then they only learn that people do have boundaries, people do have integrity, people do have inner wisdom. That's sometimes how you actually show most love.
Welcome everybody to Spirituality. If you are new here, my name is Kat and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. If you're returning, welcome back and thank you so much. Joining me today is Ivana Care, who is a life coach and trauma healer who works with root cause therapy. And I'm so excited to have her here and have this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you jump in, start off a little by just letting people know a little bit about your journey, how you got into doing this kind of work, how it evolved for you?
Yeah. So you already said it really nicely that I work with trauma healing, and how I got in was through my failed relationship. So my specialty is guiding women who went through a challenging relationship to rediscover themselves, because it could be challenging for your confidence, for your sense of happiness and the sense of yourself. So it is a bit of a journey, and it's nice to be guided by someone who can tap into that emotion. So I did go through this journey myself, and I have maybe two main life partners who I have both one child with. I have two daughters, one with one dad and second one with second dad. And second time around, I started to tap into the patterns. I was fearing conflict, fearing showing my true self or my needs, and I was people pleasing, avoiding conflict, avoiding difficult conversation. Yeah, it simply
Yeah.
went too far because it was too challenging, and I wasn't honest and true to myself, where I was very empathetic for the other part. They have challenges, so I always answer that conflict for them, not for myself. I find myself in very uncomfortable situations, so I was not feeling my intuition, not feeling what is the right decision in the situation. It kind of felt like the life is happening to me and I have no grip on it. It was very fast and very kind of avoiding one or a big problem and just trying to survive. So those
Yeah.
were my symptoms, and I didn't know how
Absolutely.
to get out of it.
I think that's really, really relatable for people,
Yeah.
especially I find it's really common for people who are on a healing life, a healer's life path, like
Hmm.
people who are healers themselves
Yeah.
tend to be like wanting to avoid conflict or trying to make it better for other people. And so it's, I think that that's very relatable. A lot of people who are genuinely healers themselves find themselves in that situation sometimes.
Yeah, or delivering some difficult comment, you almost want to save that person from being disappointed. So you tap
Yeah.
into their disappointment, and for that reason, you cannot deliver those, difficult topics, or sometimes it's rejection, or so that was my experience, and I got further and further away from myself and just disconnected, because the pain and the discomfort of my own life, it was just further and further. And I actually started praying for the lift of for the veil of like the deception to be lifted, right? So I was listening to podcasts, like doing some, spiritual searches, and just like, what is for me? And all of a sudden I heard this lady in a podcast, funny enough, just speaking my language. It just resonated. Something was telling me, just get in touch and get something moving. So she helped me, and it was what I've experienced started working, right? So that's how I realized, like, this work actually, this modality or this type of work actually works. And bit by bit, I started to realize what works, how my body feels when it's a yes, how my body feels when it's a no, and starting to have that compass in life working again, finding my own truth and what resonates, what doesn't resonate, and being more in my body and in my truth. So at first it wasn't difficult. I had to make difficult decisions, as such to leave the relationship. What I thought was my soulmate wasn't my soulmate. I had to rebuild my life from nothing. And the only thing, I always knew that I did have the sense at that point already what is right and what is wrong. Before, I could not decide like which way to go, but only through the healing I could tap into the strength of knowing, even though if it's hard, you actually are on a good path. So the first step was the opening eyes. So the reality was, I had an 8-month-old baby, and I had to go to women's refuge, give up all my, property, car, even the pram, everything, and started from scratch. But I knew it's a healthy way, and pattern recognition is a key to be able to see through what is happening in your life. There must be a way out. And I was trying to work out through the patterns for what works for me. And in the same time, I felt the calling, like to walk that journey, because then I can take others with me. So that was all in a sudden the empowered feeling that I'm not doing this just for myself, but for others as well. And with more and more success I had, I felt more and more empowered and called to start helping women, not just in that situation, but in any relationship pattern. So for some, it's healthy issues, and some store the stress in the body and it starts showing us as health issues. For some, it's a career challenge. But for me and people I like to serve and help, it feels like the pattern is showing up in their relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're right. It doesn't necessarily have to just be partner relationships. Sometimes those toxic relationships can be family members. Sometimes it can be, you can even have toxic relationships with children or other people in your life, like the people that are closest to you. And it just, and especially I think for women, where for so much of history or for so long, really the power of being a healer, the power of being empathic, to being able to tap into those emotional currents was considered weak or not really useful or worthy. It was kind of downplayed by society and sort of relegated to a backseat role. So I think as people now in the modern era are shaking off those definitions and stepping out on their own, it's really helpful to have people who've been there to help hold everyone else. We all have to kind of hold each other's hand through the process of reawakening our own inner strength, the value in those types of assets.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the language you use around it, and just like very carefully laying it, because still part of me who don't like to call people toxic or relationships toxic, because in some way, like, the biggest pain is the biggest opportunity for you to see the truth and like to uncover like what hurts here. It means just what needs attention and love. It doesn't mean like the other person's just evil, because if we believe in the concept that someone is wrong, then in some level, like I just had a healing session actually today where feeling like when my mom is angry, she's supposed to be rejected. Also feel when I feel anger, I'm wrong and I should be rejected. So sometimes when we feel like other person's doing something wrong, as soon as I start like feeling that emotion, I see myself as wrong. So therefore, like, I actually suppressed the feeling of anger because I didn't want to become like too much or too uncontrolled, or through that judgment of other people who should express signs of being angry and judging them, I judged myself as when I was angry. It's like, you're not allowed, don't do this, don't feel anger.
Yeah.
And by not tapping into anger, you actually are not in touch with what are your boundaries. Anger always tells you about who touched your boundaries or what situation is, you know, like right and wrong. And if you don't have access to that information, like your compass, your life compass is actually not working. So anger is a beautiful emotion when it's embodied and when it's like treated as such, as emotion. The behavior, which is not like integrated in the anger, which should be fixed or like treated as that's a unhealthy way to express the anger.
I actually really appreciate you bringing that up, because I do think that there is a tendency to take a lot of words and turn them into like you were saying, like a blame shifting thing. Like somebody else is toxic, or you know, or somebody else is a narcissist. Narcissist is another one that's out there quite a bit right now too. There is a tendency to want to blame shift, and I think at least for me, like a toxic situation is when something is being repressed or not being expressed. It can actually turn inward and turn into like toxicity is when something starts to poison you on the inside because it's not actually being expressed, or it's being internalized in a way that it doesn't need to be. But I think you're right in that there is a lot of a tendency to want to blame shift onto the other person, like you're a toxic person, rather than this situation or the interaction we're having is toxic to us. So
Yeah, and the other trap which can happen is trying to tap into emotions of the other person and trying to save them, as we kind of touched on it in the past as well. And people who are very empathetic can kind of jump into saving the other person and not feeling their own boundaries. So that was where I feel like I had to take responsibility over feeling myself first and ask myself first, because I was default trying to save others and not being responsible for saving myself first. And that's where I had to kind of rebuild those patterns, and it wasn't easy because it's a kind of embodied experience. And even though if you see it as a thing which is showing up in your life, like I always give in an argument, like I don't go in a conflict because I'm scared, like on a cognitive level or on a mental level, like I can be trained by someone or be reminded by, let's say, a counselor, who say like, oh yeah, you freeze in arguments. Like I know my body has that response because that's the best I could come up with when I was 6-year-old, and when this got imprinted in me that I am scared to shout, I am scared to be punished, or whatever was the original story. So what we have to tap into back is the body and kind of process that fear of that 6-year-old and tap into that, like what was she scared of, why was she, how she felt, and hold her in that moment. And this is now explaining the modality of the root cause therapy. So by teaching the body how it feels to be scared and how it feels when you go through the tunnel of, like, on the other side of that feeling of being scared, then when you're in a conflict, it's no longer cognitive, like I should say but my mouth doesn't speak. You all of a sudden have more access because you know, like, okay, it will take 5 seconds or it will take 60 seconds, and I know my fear will kind of ease and I'll be able to speak, and I'm no longer kind of resisting going in that fear and panic and what will I do, like I will always, and going too much of being in the head in that situation. So we're reteaching ourselves on a body level, on a soma, how to be in those situations and how to process the original imprint or trauma or the original pattern which is stuck in the body.
And I think I personally think that it's kind of important to go to that deep level, because trauma does tend to live in the body physically. And I mean, and I have heard, I talked to a lot of different people and listened to different people, and I have heard that, you know, there is kind of this way of thinking out there that if you just tell yourself a different story, or you just don't think about something anymore, that it will start to change the way you think about it. And you may find, this is me personally found in working with these, that you find some success in changing the way you think about things that way, but it was like still triggered physically, right? You can feel that, you know, it didn't actually, even though I'm thinking different thoughts, it didn't fix the response. And I think that that's especially true in fear situations. Even when you feel like you're thinking about it and processing it differently, like mentally, it doesn't stop the fear reaction from being in the body. So taking it and regressing all of that stuff back to where that physical response started and began to be a pattern is, I think, the only way to actually really work through the healing for it.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that. And there's intelligence of our body. So at first, like, this response was necessary in that time, like whether it was shut down or deassociation or getting angry or not getting angry, that was a survival mechanism that 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, I don't know when it originally began. That was the best strategy for the body. The fact that it just repeated, it's another story. But we have to appreciate that as being a gift, because that was the only resource and the safest or more practical way to deal with that original situation. The body has a wisdom, and by working with my clients, it's always them understanding the situation. So once you go through the first layer of emotions, the wisdom comes to the person experiencing those emotions. So it's not me saying like, now you're happy, now you love your mom. It's always like, I ask, what do you see now? What do you feel out? What do you feel now that you have the perspective? Like, has anything changed? And a lot of the time you can experience like a profound breakthrough by experiencing that the wisdom is always with them, always in the body. And the unconscious has the ability to repair, to heal on its own, just with the safe space, gives the confidence to the person experiencing the healing that I already have all I needed. Like, I don't need another person. I don't need someone fixing me as such. I just needed a room. I just needed to slow down. I just needed a safe environment to heal. That's how it feels doing this therapy, and that's what I like about it, because the body
Yeah.
just it's on its own.
And I do think that taking that approach on it is really important because for integration, right?
Yeah.
It's you can be told things all day long, but for them to really be authentic and take and to gain everything out of it, it kind of has to be a process of integrating that knowing for yourself until it really comes to that moment organically. I think sometimes just when people tell us something, even though we may, once again, we may understand it intellectually, but processing it through and getting it to where the wisdom becomes applicable, like where we can actually use it effectively in our lives, and apply it to healing a situation, that has to, I think, has to come from the journey of the person going through it. So
Yeah, yeah. And there could be such a variety of limiting beliefs we can overcome. Like for this journey, it could be like, I'm not safe to sleep because something happened and I've just, was scared from a dream or something, and it could just stay for me for forever. And now I have troubles with insomnia. So the symptoms are a variety of things. So the range of who can be helped or who can access the positive outcomes, it's profound. Like it's very effective with addictions, like, well, anything could be addiction, even jumping from a relationship to a relationship. It could be, I don't know, binge watching
hopefully
TV.
not tea, because then I'm in trouble.
But another thing is, like, we should not look at it as something which is ruining our life. Again, like, addiction is nothing else, just us trying to soothe what hurts. And I've witnessed a lot of people who, like, once they tap into that emotion, let's say, like, oh, there's a cloud on my chest. Actually, this is not a new feeling. Like, I feel like I've had this cloud for such a long time. It's so familiar that I forgot about that. I carry that feeling with me. So that's how, yeah.
Yeah, you and I had talked a little bit before when we were doing our pre-meeting for this episode about how sometimes it doesn't even have to be like some big trauma that we remember and that sticks with us. Like the body, like you said, has a real wisdom to it. So when you're having a response or something that you feel like you're blocked, it's possible to not even know where it comes from.
Yeah.
So doing that regression, you may find you and I have been chatting about, it might even be something small, or from your adult perspective, you might even not even think of it as something terribly important, because things hit when you're a child so different. So a lot of times it may even be rooted in something small that as a child we didn't understand or integrate our feelings about it real well at the time.
Yeah, get ice cream. It's simple as that. Yeah, it can cause you a lot, because over time it actually keep bringing you that same challenge, that same sensation, and it's a layer up and layer. Because, like, let's say it is the example of ice cream, right? So I don't deserve things in life, and there it is, and you have now belief, and every time similar thing happens, you just reassure yourself, I don't deserve things in life, right? And I just go on and on. It could be, at work, it could be in relationship, it could be like a lot of things. And every time, like, you get yourself in the same circumstances, you just reconfirm and build it bigger and bigger and bigger. And even though, like, it's not one significant event as like a car accident or something you can remember and put a finger on, you forgot about that little ice cream and it didn't stay as an active memory, but it built up over time, because those little things just keep reconfirming for you that you're not worthy of receiving from the universe. So yeah, if we go to the original one, which is part of as you mentioned, going through like a regression or light relaxed state and asking the unconscious mind, where is the root? So the unconscious mind is trying to track down the earliest memory, which could be just a very, very innocent one. And
yeah, and you're right, it's because it became a limiting belief at such a young age, what you end up with is like a lifetime of proof of
Yeah.
concept. Like, and so what you're remembering is all of the other instances where things didn't work out for me, or
Mm-hmm.
something went wrong, or I wasn't worthy, or I was rejected, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When,
Mm-hmm.
originally it might have just been like I was telling you, mine was I had made a big mess with a painting. And I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful creative painting, but the adults were all really mad. And that was like preschool. I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
So of course
Mm-hmm.
they were mad. I made a big mess with paint. As an adult, I understand that, but holding on to that, like it's not safe for me to put my creative works out there. Like it'll be
Yeah.
rejected. People won't like it. That, you know what I mean? That actually builds up over time and becomes a belief, a proof of concept belief over time rather than any one big traumatic event.
So what is the key there? And I'm curious about your experience. How did you
Mhm.
reveal that limitation, or how did it had to show up for you so you could suddenly kind of like realize, I'm scared of it, or I am unable to put my artwork out there. So that is interesting point for me, because sometimes it goes so long unnoticed until, like, when is the point where we actually notice it? I'm
So for
curious.
me, and I with you, like you were saying, a lot of times things show up in the body.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I did a lot of work with emotion, like things were showing up with me for me emotion wise. So I went through a process of realizing that my feelings, I'm not my feelings. My feelings are me communicating with myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at how I was actually feeling. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was so nervous about just simple things, singing karaoke or
Yeah.
drawing my pictures. Like I didn't even, because I do art too, but it's like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even want to leave them out around the house for my husband to see, you know? Like I
Yeah.
was so scared of putting myself out there. And when I got guided that I needed to start doing spiritual work, like
Mm-hmm.
sharing, talking to people, being online, and I was like, there's no way, I'm terrified of myself. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had to start working with like little by little, like, okay, my my feelings aren't controlling me. My feelings are there to help me. They're there to guide me. They're an internal communication structure for me to understand what's going on with things. So what are they telling me?
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of inner child work, and but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, I've been meditating since I was a kid. So I would ask my inner child, like, take me to the place where this happened. Walk
Mm-hmm.
me through it. Show me where we started feeling this way. So
Mm-hmm.
that instance in particular was
Yeah.
I asked my inner child to take me
Mm-hmm.
and show me where it was. Where was the first time that we felt like this? So I can
Mm-hmm.
understand where this began for us.
So intuitive. I love that. Yeah. And also you tap into that awareness, which is the step one, right? And being curious. And then you led with curiosity rather than judgment. Like you kind of like, well, I'm just asking a question. Please answer. So I think those are two essential steps on that growth and healing journey. Is like being kind to yourself, and also be kind what people call awake, right? Awake to the patterns, awake to how do I feel like when I do this? How do I feel when I do that? And yeah, that's lovely. You sum it up so beautifully. Hmm.
For me, it was a process of following the feelings.
Hmm.
I knew I was tapping into when I feel really good and excited about something. Like I was already used to like that's a good path to follow. Like if I feel good and excited,
Mm.
engaged, but what are the other feelings telling me? Because they're still
Hmm.
there too. I mean, we're humans. We have a variety. We have a whole mix and broad spectrum of emotions, and learning to change my relationship with my feelings. Like feelings are my friend, no matter
Hmm.
what feelings they are. It's almost a sixth sense in that
Hmm.
it's a part of our communication, it's a part of how we interact with each other. It's an important part of our senses, our
Yeah.
feelings. And I think maybe we don't give enough space and honor that as much as a part of our natural senses that we use to operate in the world. So it was kind of a deep dive exploration for me along those lines. But
So beautiful how you speak, because like my journey was through being not validated, right, in the relationship where someone overrides what you feel. And just hearing this, like I can feel like my heart expanding, because I can sense the truth now. Like the feelings are important, feelings are you, feelings are friends. And just like I can feel such a warm feeling while you speak. That is that reassurance, that validation that what I feel is the truth, right? So I love that you said it. I just, yeah, took a lot of insight and healing from hearing your words. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, no problem. And it's, I don't think anybody comes onto any of this, how do I say this well? No journey is all love and light, right? Like, it took a lot of very dark, not good
Yeah.
feelings for me too before I was like, something is not, why do I have this relationship with my own feelings? Like, why do I hate the way I feel? Like this, it doesn't make sense that we have these senses that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why would I have something that's just there to hurt me? Like that doesn't make sense.
Mm, mm,
So there
mm,
must be some serious important reason why we have feelings. Otherwise, what purpose do they serve? And it was just me going through
yeah.
like, okay, there has to be some real reason why this is here for us. Some
Mm-hmm.
critical important reason for this. It's not just here to stab me in the heart every time, you know,
Mm,
like there's something it's trying to communicate. So but yeah, I think everybody's journey is a lot of ups and downs, and I don't think
mm.
there's any shame in that, right? I don't think anybody the learning process is a is kind of a roller coaster ride, right?
It is. And being the human body is a trip.
Let me ask you a question because this is
Yeah.
something that I ran into some curiosity with and something that was kind of working with too is the balance between releasing other people from expectations while still maintaining boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I personally felt like part of my problem was I was looking at a husband instead of a person, a father instead of a person, a
Mm-hmm.
mother instead of a person. Like I had kind of assigned roles and what I thought those roles were supposed to be to the people around me in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through this whole phase of where I was really trying to take responsibility for my feelings myself. Like my feelings are my internal communication structure. So it's up to me to work with my feelings and I need to reclaim the power or take back the energy from other people. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not responsible for my feelings. I
Mm-hmm.
am.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an odd balance in there about still having boundaries at the same time. Like that doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want to do to me. It just means that I'm going to be not expecting you to make me feel a way that I can't make myself feel. I need to examine
Mm-hmm.
that.
Like I think what hurts is putting labels on people, whether like they're too good or too bad, and that's hurtful. But describing a pattern or a behavior, but the
Hmm.
person doesn't have to be like bad as a person, not worthy of love in general, and like being a narcissist or too critical or be toxic. I just feel like we should take away the labels from that person and just describe of what it is. And once we put the words to like, well, every time I come to my dad with a feeling, he can't tap into that feeling. So it doesn't mean he's a bad person, he's a bad dad, he should go to, I don't know, jail, emotional rehab, or whatever you would kind of a bad person. You just make a conclusion that my dad doesn't match me on the emotional intelligence or emotional uh, sensitivity.
Hmm.
And I have to go to a safe person if I'm looking for emotional closeness. So I can go to my dad to repair a car. I can go to my dad to watch a movie with him, but I don't go to my dad to validate my feelings. I go to someone I trust to validate my feelings. It's not to describe that this person's such and such, but rather observe the behavior or the pattern, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's useful to peel the labels off of people to whatever you thought that label was supposed to mean or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you wanted that label to mean to
Yeah.
you. How do you think that relates to being able at some point to peel the labels off of ourselves as well? Because that's another thing that happens
Mm-hmm.
is, feeling judged based on a label yourself. So am I a bad
Yeah.
mom or am I a
Yeah.
bad wife? Like
That's it.
maybe how am I trying to getting this through is like, is there a piece about like releasing other people from the labels also helps you to release yourself from
Exactly.
labels and expectations?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I think is helpful, because then you're more free. And yeah, that's exactly why I think. And you're also then not sensitive to be put labels on, because know who you are and you know yourself, you know your behavior. So if someone say you're not a bad mom, like it doesn't stick, it just falls, because like I don't associate it with that label, I don't associate with those statements. What I feel is like, well, this person is probably looking through I don't know, pink glasses or some level of like filter through which they might see my limitations, but no one can describe me as good or bad, or I'm not just mum. So again, like once you integrate all of those learnings into yourself, like it also frees you up from being labeled, and that's very empowering feeling. Yeah. And what helps is actually realizing, just as we had to work and heal those patterns, you just have a compassion for, like, this person's just living their patterns, and that's probably how they behave. Like, I'm not saying like we let them to hurt us. No, we don't let them to hurt us, but we can on some level kind of feel compassion of like, you didn't integrate your fear response, or you didn't integrate your guilt, and that's what you're projecting on me. But you can have that level of understanding, but without kind of feeling like too sorry or saving them. You just kind of know, like, well, I had a power to do it for me, you have a power to do it for you, and that's okay.
I think it almost leads me to like feeling like unconditional love, just of people in general, of humanity in general, and of ourselves in general, almost requires a little bit of the ability to detach from like whatever it is you're doing and whatever your behavior is and wherever you are on your path is okay, because it doesn't impact my validity as a person.
Yeah, and it's
Or
their
if I,
responsibility, not mine, right? Some like,
right.
yeah.
And in that way I can love other people for where they are and for their human experience, like, and for the things that they're going through, because it's not impacting me. So it's almost like there's unconditional love is the ability to step back from other people's situations and appreciate the path and who they
Yeah.
are as people, without having to get yourself emotionally tangled up in how their behavior impacts you. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And they are worthy of receiving love and being loved and feel love, all of that. Like, we're not trying to take it away from some people, or half of the population, or 20%, or like, I don't know who. Everyone is equal in the right to feel love and receive love from each other. So we're not depriving anyone from anything. So I kind of felt like I was ahead in that sense, kind of like the goodness, the humanity, but I didn't know how to first like tap into my own, like, in a sense of like, sometimes helping someone is by telling them no, because then they only learn that people do have boundaries, people do have integrity, people do have inner wisdom, people do have closed door, and that's sometimes how you actually show your most love.
Yeah, but certainly that's a I think maybe we don't talk about that like life lesson enough sometimes, is that sometimes pulling the plug on something is a way to show love and respect to somebody else, in that it's time for you to walk your path and go inward and work on some things for yourself. Like, I'm going to validate you by letting you do your work on your own. You are a human soul. You do have the what it takes, the feelings, the thought processes, the connection to your own guides and your own intuitions. So I'm going to believe in your worthiness to do the path for yourself and
How
step off of that.
beautiful.
You don't need me to help you. You're not that helpless. You've got this. That's a whole different way of looking at it, especially when you're a chronic helper. You feel like you want to help, and because I feel that so much, right? Like, I really want to help people. I really want to be able to help you work through things, and sometimes the best thing you can do is believe in people's ability to handle their lives for themselves.
100%. I love how, yeah, how we went through the whole journey together, exploring that topic and coming to that conclusion. So beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you want to let people know really fast where they can find you? Do you have a website or a Instagram, anything you want to drop and let people know where they can find you at?
Yeah, the best is actually clicking, so no one will type what I will say anyway. But it's Ivana Care, care for SARE. I'm actually Sydney based, funny enough, organizing workshops, but they're online. So it could be also through my workshop, which I organize for people who are going through breakup or divorce. I have topics on confidence and other talks. I also do the personal sessions with coaching and the root cause therapy for whoever wants to go even deeper. And what else do I do? Yeah, some podcasts, which is accessed on my website as well. We can link it below.
Absolutely. I will put
Mm,
all of those links in the description so people can click on and find you and
yeah.
check you out. You guys go check out Ivana Care. It sounds like an incredible program from somebody who's been there caring and willing to help. I appreciate you so much for being here, for sharing
Thank
your
you.
journey, for being open and candid. The more we put things out there and share, the more, like I said, we're holding each other's hands through things, right? So I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm
And
glad you could hold the space for the depth we went into, and you were also leading with being vulnerable and tapping into like a big topics on humanity and love and all of those big concepts. And you're beautiful how you handle it.
absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for being
Mm.
here, for joining us. Drop us a comment. Let us know how it resonates. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. And we will see you next time on Spirituality.